Hello, everyone. I thought I would talk about potential ties between Israel and Jared Fogle, the convicted S offender and former Subway spokesperson, and the Subway restaurant chain. I'm seeing some interesting tie-ins and things that haven't really been brought to light too much yet. We need to talk about these. So Jared came to the spotlight in a really strange and, in my opinion, not an organic seeming way. This feels very much orchestrated, his rise to fame. But basically, there was an article in the student newspaper that came out about him. This was in the Indiana Daily Student, written by a former dorm mate, who's talking about how Jared had supposedly lost all this weight by exercising and eating Subway sandwiches, which, by the way, that's a very convenient story for the brand. I don't believe any of it. I've never seen a shred of evidentiary support for this story. That's how he lost all this weight, truly. Next, that article gets magically picked up by Men's Health, and Jared's diet gets covered in this article, Stupid Diets That Work. Very interesting. Again, we don't have any evidence that I've seen that's truly how he lost this weight. It's a very convenient brand story. Then, a Subway franchisee in Chicago takes the story in Men's Health to the Chicago ad agency for Subway, and then they start running regional ads, which are successful. So then the ads broaden in where they are being run. The first ad was run on January 1st, 2000, which I also want to point out what a very short time frame this was. April 1999 is when the student newspaper ad or story comes out, all the way to January 1st, 2000, when the first ad is run with Jared. I don't think that this was an organic rise to fame at all. And what's interesting too is that the LA Times, who was covering part of this story, was kind of talking about how this was the official narrative, and in my opinion, shading this story as well. So we have this man, Jared Fogle, who has this very inorganic seeming rise to fame that's rapid and benefits this big brand. Now, I want to talk about some other data points. I say these with love. Jared Fogle did go on a trip to Israel when he was younger. He did a birthright trip where he was bar mitzvahed. It's not clear what happened on that trip. I didn't find too many details about it, but it's definitely possible he would have met some interesting people he stayed in touch with, or that he already had deeper ties to Israel. And given how prominent Israel has been with our media, I think it's very likely that Israel would have seized on an opportunity to get closer with Jared and get closer with Subway and have a deeper relationship there at a minimum. We know that Subway was opening up restaurants in Israel. We know that they opened multiple kosher restaurants, which was very unusual for a restaurant chain like this. A lot of the restaurant chains that have kosher offerings, they're places like ice cream stores that already have those offerings. It's very unusual for a chain that's serving meats and things like that to have fully kosher restaurants. Anyway, there are these ties here, or at least efforts to appeal to the Jewish community. We don't know exactly what's going on with Israel, if anything is going on. And I say this with a lot of love too, because I am part ethnically Jewish. I love the Jews. We need to support them. I'm not pro-Israel, but I love the Jews. Anyway, let's get into more of the story. So we have these facts now. I also want to point out that Jared had been bragging about traveling overseas to meet for you know what. Apparently he traveled quite a bit, and a lot of things were happening on his travels. We're not sure everywhere that he traveled, but we know for a fact that he did his bad things in other countries besides the United States. Now, we also know that Jared was engaged in trafficking, and he had co-conspirators. He worked with Russell Taylor, this man, and Russell Taylor's ex-wife, who were also charged, and they had this shady nonprofit which basically just stored money. It mainly gave payouts to Russell Taylor, who was essentially Jared Fogle's director for you know what bad stuff. And so we know that that's all going on. Now, what's also interesting with this whole story is that Subway had been receiving complaints about Jared from multiple people. Also, this is the fairly early 2000s, which were a somewhat progressive time, but not even as progressive as today. I mean, people were getting away with more then. Also, guess who else was active around 2000s? Anyway, there were multiple complaints being made about Jared, and Subway has acknowledged that it was receiving certain complaints and it regrets. It denied receiving some of the complaints, but it was also allegedly Subway was also allegedly making excuses for Jared, saying that he wasn't an employee and things like that. So they weren't handling them. Just ridiculous. I just have to wonder if Subway was involved more deeply with what Jared was doing. Another data point I want to bring up. Subway has some nonprofits. It has Subway Cares, and then the wife of the founder of Subway, who is now dead, she has two nonprofits. Subway Cares, the Subway nonprofit, and one of the nonprofits that the Subway founder's widow has, both have similar shady patterns of behavior when I was looking into this. They both do all this asset accumulation without really giving out disbursements and things like that. It's very interesting. I'm going to talk about more implications as well of this situation. There could be somewhat more benign explanations for this, although I really don't think so, because this is a corporation, this is the person who have a lot of resources at their disposal to make their nonprofits really functional things that contribute to society. But there are some potential implications of this, which is there could be undisclosed payments going on with these nonprofits, such as money being shifted to insiders, vendors, and related entities without clear disclosure. These resources can be kept available for internal purposes. These can be just kind of ways to store money, essentially, in these nonprofits. As far as I can tell, we just can't really see where the money is going with this. So there are just a lot of red flags with this situation. I'm not saying when it comes to the nonprofits and things like that, and the fact that Subway took no real action from what it seems when they were receiving all these complaints. So I have a lot of questions about what's going on here. Let me know what you think of this whole situation.